A note to our listeners. We recorded this episode before Super Typhoon Rolly and Typhoon Ulysses. We hope you and your loved ones are safe.
We saw that majority said that the franchise of ABS-CBN should have been renewed. And they also say that non-renewal of the ABS-CBN franchise would be a big blow to the freedom of expression or freedom of the press.
Hello, this is Give a Hoot.
I'm Oya.
I'm Joza.
And I'm Mika.
We are Wise Owl.
Wise Owl is a consultancy firm that specializes in communication for social change.
In the last episode, we talked about who the mass market is, what are their aspirations and attitudes, and why do we need all of this if we want to, number one, know the pulse of the Filipino people, and number two, affect social change. In this episode, the last of a 3-part mini-series on the Masa, we talk about how they consume media and who they trust. Again, we have with us Leo Laroza, the Director of Communication and Information Technology for the Social Weather Stations or SWS, and Wati Doctor, the President of Thinkscape Research. Leo, what exactly is the main source of information for the public?
Television still is the number one source of information for the public. But we've also seen that Facebook already overtook radio in terms of usage for news and information. We also see that cellular phones actually is already owned by 9 out of 10 Filipinos. 9 out of 10 households, I mean. So that's 91% of households reporting that any of their family members has a cellular phone. So it's not even asking, are they owning one phone for each member? But definitely, cellular phone ownership has already overtaken television ownership.
We also asked Wati, what is media consumption during the pandemic like?
Maraming mas nag-online kasi nasa bahay ka na lang eh. So, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, yung mga may Netflix, mas nagtin-Netflix sila ngayon. Tapos nangyari pa yung na-shutdown yung ABS-CBN, right? So before, nung medyo pa-start pa lang ng lockdown, yung mga tao, kasi may iWant TV so they can still watch their news programs or telenovela sa ABS. Pero nung nawala na talaga si ABS-CBN, some of them moved to more social media. Yung iba naman, okay, kapag news, nakikinig sa GMA, pero mas nararamdaman mo talaga na medyo kulang na yung napagkukuhanan ng mga information. Mas nagpo-follow rin yung mga tao sa Facebook pages ng mga LGUs nila, like yung sa City Hall. They also follow the pages of their barangay hall kung meron, or yung mga friends nila sa barangay.
Meron ba kayo in your research na nakita na sino yung pinagkakatiwalaan nila?
The ones that they trust would be mainly the media. So they usually follow online yung mga GMA, yung the likes of CNN, The Guardian, New York Times, Philstar, Philippine Inquirer. They usually like the FB pages of those sources, tapos lumalabas na lang sa feeds nila. They also follow yung mga agencies like DOH. But there was a time na medyo may discrepancy sa data, so mas nagre-rely sila sa media.
We've touched on how the shutdown of ABS-CBN has affected the Masa's media consumption. How do they feel about this? Here's Leo.
Majority said that the franchise of ABS-CBN should have been renewed. And they also say that non-renewal of the ABS-CBN franchise would be a big blow to the freedom of expression or freedom of the press. So there's majority support when it comes to keeping ABS-CBN on air.
But Wati's group at Thinkscape Research had different findings.
Hati sila. Hati. Kasi at one point, iniisip nila na baka meron talagang ginawang kasalanan si ABS-CBN. Meaning to say, may mga tax evasion or meron talagang hindi na sunod na batas, which is why talagang deserve nila yung shutdown. But on the other hand, naawa rin sila kasi maraming mawawalan ng trabaho, especially during this pandemic. And at the same time, medyo untimely siya. Kasi nasa panahon tayo ng COVID, ng pandemya, and iba yung ginagawa na focus ng gobyerno. So, ang hinahanap ng tao was, ano ba yung plano ng gobyerno pagdating sa COVID, pagdating sa mga tao, paano sila kakain, paano sila mabubuhay, tapos biglang pupasok tong issue ng ABS-CBN. So, medyo may discrepancy doon sa kanila.
But hindi ba importante at this time very much for people yung information like updates about COVID, for example? Bakit hindi nararamdaman sa bituka yung shutdown ng ABS?
Marami silang sources of information. Sige, di ba sa Facebook, they follow all these legit sources. They follow the City Hall, they follow the government agencies, they follow the barangay. So, all of these, ang dami na nilang actually information. So, which is why, to answer Oya's question, hindi siya masyado nararamdaman, hindi siya malapit sa bituka. Kasi, feeling nila, marami pa silang mapagkukuhanan ng impormasyon. Yes, tama ka na sa ibang areas, mas malakas ang ABS-CBN. Which is why, when we talk to some respondents who were in the provinces, mas ramdam talaga nila na wala na yung ABS-CBN. But, para sa kanila, pwede pa naman akong kumuha ng information sa ibang sources like the City Hall, the government, the barangay. So, kumbaga, mas nararamdaman nila yung pagkawala ng ABS dahil sa mga sinusubaybayan nilang programa.
Siguro for us as communicators, one of the things that we look at is parang framing, how we approach how things are being communicated, especially kapag hot issue siya. The way na ABS-CBN framed it was about labor. Maraming mawawalan ng trabaho, nasa pandemya tayo, ito ba yung inuuna? Pero meron ding mga nagsasabi na baka dapat mas nag-focus on freedom of the press or freedom of expression. Is that something na for the masses, is that a concern that will hit them?
It doesn't really matter to them. Bakit? One, for them, hindi nakakurtail ang press freedom kasi marami pa rin silang sources of information. Kumbaga, hindi siya naging impactful for them. Pangalawa, ano ba ang press freedom? Malayo to sa bituka. Mas mabigat pa rin or mas isipin pa rin nila yung karapatan ko magkaroon ng pagkain, ng trabaho versus thinking about press freedom.
Wati, babalikan ko lang yung sinabi mo kanina. No? Sabi mo, yung mga tao, while hindi nila ramdam yung ABS-CBN issue, naawa sila doon sa mga nawala ng trabaho. Parang ang interpretation ko doon is ang lakas ng empathy ng mga Pilipino para doon sa mga tao na nagigipit dahil sa pandemic. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Malakas talaga yung empathy ng mga tao. Lalo na doon sa mga nawala ng trabaho. Malakas rin yung empathy ng mga tao dun sa mga nawalan ng negosyo. Kasi alam nila na konektado lahat yung kapag nawalan to ng negosyo, mawawalan ng trabaho yung mga tao niya, na-shutdown si ABS, mawawalan ng trabaho yung mga tao nila, yung mga cameramen, lightsmen, yung mga rank and file. So, lahat damay. At alam nila kapag wala silang trabaho, saan sila kukuha ng pera pang tustos?
And do they do anything about it?
That's the thing. Hindi siya organized thing to help. It's more of an individual thing na parang ako magbibigay na lang ng donation.
We know that TV is still the masses' medium of choice, but Facebook is a close second. And with everyone being stuck indoors during the pandemic, more and more Filipinos are going online. Here's Leo with Oya and Joza.
What creates the class divide is internet. Of course, the upper classes, there are more of them with access to the internet, and the masses would be 49%. But everything becomes equal once the masses get access to the internet. Everyone from 99% to 97% would have Facebook specifically. Twitter is slightly more among the upper classes, but there are also the Class D there and very few Class E. YouTube is the number one choice for the Class AB. But 40% of the masa with internet access also look at YouTube. And we're talking about news. Instagram is popular among the masa. More popular among the masa than the upper classes.
Pero interesting yung Instagram. Parang in our line of work, hindi masyadong nababanggit ang Instagram as something that you use for the masses. Apparently, nandun sila. What are the parang type of content na kinokonsume ng mga masses?
That one we don't have yet, but we know that when they go to Facebook, the number one activity that they do is to share. Not create their own content, but to share or comment or the react. The bulk of the activity being done across all classes, as long as they're using Facebook, is simply react, or the clicking of the like, heart, or sad, angry.
So it's reacting. What about comments? Very few?
Very few. First would be reacting, and then forward or reposting, sharing, and then commenting. We were looking to freedom of speech, by the way, and it's very much alive, even with what's happening to media. Across classes, they think that they can say anything, even if it's against the government, but they acknowledge that if you say it over media, then it can be dangerous.
Remember, these findings were before the pandemic struck, before the quarantine rules were in place, and before the anti-terror law was enacted, even before the debates about it and protests over it occurred. But back to media consumption.
Would you be interested in what kind of newspaper they read? It's a strange result because among the Class D or the masa, with almost equal share or proportion, say they read Filipino Star ngayon, Manila Bulletin, and then Bulgar. In terms of radio station, do you want to hear that?
First AM or FM?
There's no distinction.
Okay.
Love Radio, DZMM, DZRH.
And as for TV,
Among the masa, it's ABS-CBN, followed by GMA 7, and then TV5.
Joza Oy and I ask Wati for additional insights.
Radyo, hindi na masyado. Pero ang napapansin ko, tumataas ang YouTube nila. Kasi, kunwari, magko-follow na lang sila ng Showtime or Itbulaga. Manonood na lang sila ng segments doon. Kung anong trending, ang kadalasan na malakas, well, for doon sa mga nakausap ko, kunwari, nagko-commute sila. Yung mga, alam mo yung mga playlist or yung mga full album of ganyan-ganyan yon. So, doon sa nakikinig or kung ano yung nakakatawa. Kung ano yung nakakatawa, challenge, yung mga challenge, basketball.
And you said kanina yung mga episodes, yung mga shows din.
Mm.
They watch on YouTube.
Yes,
So parang naging extension siya ng TV pa rin.
Yes.
Pero on
extension.
demand whenever they want.
Mm-mm. Or kunwari, ika-anim na utos. Tapos manonood ka na nun, diba, ng isang episode. Pwede mo pang i-download, diba?
At saan sila kumukuha ng internet?
May free. Di ba free yun sa mga promo? So kapag mag-load ka ng mobile prepaid promos, merong free YouTube. Or mag-load lang sila ng 75 pesos, tapos yun yung gagamitin nila for 1 week. Alam kong hindi enough yun, pero kung meron namang free wifi sa mall, why not?
Ang masa ba nagte-text pa?
Yes, pero kung meron ka namang data na yung sa Messenger na free, magme-messenger sila. May emoji ka pa.
Where do they get their news?
Trending sa YouTube.
So kung hindi nag-trend, hindi nila alam.
Hindi.
Okay.
Or, siguro, TV, kung nagti-TV sila. Pero ano lang yan, it's either yung morning or yung sa gabi. Yung 6 o'clock. 6:30. Facebook rin pala, kasi maraming news sa Facebook. Kunwari, yung mga lindol, minsan doon pa nila nalalaman una eh.
Okay, na-curious lang ako dun sa radio kasi I'm guessing ang dami nating mga social change advocates and clients na nagko-consider ng TV, radio, and other channels. Bakit bumababa yung radio consumption among the masses?
hindi na sila masyadong nakikinig ng radyo kasi wala na yung radio transistor, di ba? Isa yun. Pangalawa, mas magti-TV ka na lang kasi nakikita mo, naririnig mo, kung pumunta ka sa kusina, pwede mo marinig. Yung radyo, napapansin ko, kapag nagko-commute, kunwari, nasa bus, tapos nakikinig sila ng news. Pero, kalaban rin nila is yung either yung YouTube or yung Spotify.
Now we know who the mass market's sources of information are. Let's go to the question of trust. Whether it's an institution or personality, kanino ba sila nagtitiwala? Media? Church? Family?
They listen to the government, pero interspersed dyan yung opinion ng ibang tao. Lalo na yung mga malalapit sa kanila. For example, sa isang pamilya, lahat sila nanonood ng TV, di ba? So, they get the same information. But, kung ano yung sinasabi ni tatay, kung ano yung sinasabi ni nanay or ni ate, lahat yan pumapasok dun sa isip ng isang tao. And he interprets it and makes his own conclusions. So, pagdating sa sino ba yung tinatanggap nila, I think mainly news pa rin, news. Yung sa TV. Kasi yung mga TV news, na-access na rin nila sa social media yan eh.
Kasi I guess ang dami nating nakikita na iba't ibang Facebook page na mga news site. And then yung mga tao, parang hindi na kasi sila naniniwala. At least yung mga nagko-comment, hindi na sila naniniwala dun sa mga news sites ngayon on Facebook. Totoo ba yun? Or like, generally kapag balita, naniniwala naman ang mga tao?
Pag balita, naniniwala naman sila. Kasi yun pa rin yung kapamilya ka ba, kapuso. Magla-like ka lang naman doon and then you follow the news. Diba? Tapos whatever is trending, tinitignan mo rin yan. Tugma ba? Hindi. Kunwari, nung pumutok yung Taal, nag-news si GMA, nag-news si ABS-CBN, marami ring lumalabas sa YouTube, sa Facebook. And then they get to see. Lahat ng, ito, totoo to, ito, hindi. Lahat yun pupasok sa consciousness nila and then they draw their own conclusions.
We've talked about which sources of information the mass market trusts. Now let's go to the actual content.
For like advertising practitioners, sobrang common ng mga madadrama, parang teleserye yung mga commercials na napapanood. How effective is that kind of portrayal ng emotions sa mga masa market natin?
There are two important emotions among Filipinos. One is yung iyakan, yung mga hugot, kasi related, di ba? Yung isa naman, tawa. Kasi naman, naaangat yung pagka-down mo. Which is why, benta yung teleserye, di ba? Benta rin naman yung mga variety show. Naalala mo yung sa Jollibee, yung mga mahahaba din ng ads. Di ba yung iba nakakaiyak, yung iba nakakatawa, pero at the end of the day, naantig ang puso mo. Kapag nanonood ka ng mga Filipino movies, iyakan ka, Lord, di ba? Kasi, nafe-feel mo kung anong nafe-feel nila.
Bumibili ba ang Pinoy kapag naantig ang damdamin niya?
Mas naalala ka, mas relate sa'yo, mas nagkakaroon ng yung sinasabi ng brand love.
So either paiyakin mo sila or patawarin mo sila.
Pero ang napansin kong emotion na medyo nag-veer away from yung mga Pinoy, yung kapag may galit. Or, di ba, non-confrontational tayo eh.
That's really interesting kasi some of our audiences are social change advocates and because there are so many problems in society, di maiwasan sometimes to express a lot of anger and that pala doesn't gain any support.
Yes. Kapag masyado kang galit or palagi kang galit, di ba, parang ang nega naman ng taong yan.
Pero Wati, di ba may times na talagang dapat naman magalit ka about certain things?
May times talaga na dapat magalit ka. Pero mahirap kasi yung palagi kang galit na wala ka namang ginagawa.
Right. And that's what we noticed then with the mass market. Parang, okay lang yung emotion mo, pero hindi pwedeng wala kang gagawin about it. Parang ganon. Like, you have to find a way to overcome it, to either be happy or if umiyak ka na lang dyan sa like, itawa mo na lang or iiyak mo na lang yan, move on, and then do something about it.
Actually, mas move on.
Mas move on.
Mahirap yung do something about it eh.
Hindi natin kayang i-keep yung parang nega vibes of anger masyado.
Meron talaga kasi mga nega. Pero Iba yung nega na yung palagi. Which is why parang yung ibang tao, ano ba yan, ang ingay-ingay, wala naman siyang ginagawa. Anong kontribusyon niya?
Pero ito I find that very interesting kasi the hugot part naman, hindi naman move on yun eh.
Move forward lang. Don't do something about it.
Ay, ibig sabihin masakit pa rin.
Oo. May, dalawang sinabi mo move forward tsaka do something about it. Yung move forward, agree ako. Hugot ka lang ng hugot, sige. Pero yung do something about it. I mean, admittedly, hindi talaga nangyayari yun.
So baka yung either crying or laughing is some sort of relief.
Yes.
To be able to gain some relief. You cry or you laugh.
Yes.
And then you move
Nilalabas
forward
mo.
na. If you, at a certain point, they say, kailangan mag-move forward na. Kasi naiinis din sila pag masyado matagal. They don't like wallowing also.
Ako, ang question ko actually with that is, kasi like, for example, kapag puro sama ng loob, puro mga negative na balita or kung social change advocates, lagi na lang galit, I think, meron kasing kung masa market, di ba, hindi ba meron kang gut issues na kailangang i-address and hindi ka talaga pwedeng mag-stay dun sa emotion ng galit kasi meron kang mga bagay na kailangang i-address sa personal life mo.
Oo. At saka, kasi 'di ba kung isipin mo, kung katabi mo, araw-araw, laging nega, laging galit. Umaga hanggang gabi, galit. Gusto mo ba kasama yung taong yun? 'Di ba?
So parang ano ka na, hindi ka na makikinig.
But Wati, are you also saying na even if like, as magagalit ka as appropriate or iiyak ka or tatawa ka for relief, no? Tapos ang sinasabi mo, they move on. So kahit the problem persists, they just, yun nga, yung expression na tuloy pa rin, you just learn to live with your problem?
Siguro, generally, they will learn to live with their problem. May mga ibang tao lang talaga, ewan ko kung marami sila o hindi, yung talagang gagawa ng paraan para ma-resolve yung issue. Pero, mas napapansin ko na, kunwari, yung bahay ko tumutulo, sige, lagyan na lang natin ng balde o i-epoxy na lang or lagyan ng mighty Vulcasil sa taas. That's it. Yung iba naman, gagawa ko ng paraan para makapag-ipon, papalitan ko yung bubong ko. May difference.
I find that very interesting, Latino. Yung parang paggalit, ayaw mo nang makinig. Pero kasi ang dami ring, yung mga nakikinig ba, lalo na sa mga bakbakan sa radyo or sa TV. Kasi patok yan eh. Patok yun. Yung parang, uy, may gulo, ususero ako, nakikigulo din ako. Anong nangyayari dyan? How does this exist in a country where mas preferred pala natin yung hugot at saka laughter?
Siguro, it has something to do with the content. Kasi kung let's say, makikinig ako sa isang program, puro away. Pero, alam mo yun, away mag-asawa o kaya away ng kapitbahay. Ako, bilang listener, mapagtatawanan ko pa yan eh. Tingnan mo, babaw nila oh. Ano ba naman yan? Ayusin na lang nila. Versus yung araw-araw mong narinig na kapag yung seryoso, yung kunwari about politics, ayaw mo na. Di ba? So, depende sa content. Tapos sasabihin pa siguro ng listener, buti hindi nangyayari yan sa akin.
And that's it for our mini-series on the mass market. We learned that they have so many sources of information and that they're online more and more these days, especially on Facebook and YouTube. We also found the kinds of emotions that resonate with them, which can guide us as communicators when we craft our messages for social change. Thanks again to our guests, Leo Laroza and Wati Doctor, and to the people who made this possible, specifically Puma Podcast, The Spark Project, and our backers. Shout out to our producers, Trisha Aquino and Joza Quinones, and Mark Casilian, our sound guy, and our audio editor, Nico Balate.
I'm Oya.
I'm Joza.
And I'm Mika.
And look for Wise Owl PH on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Medium. You can visit our website, wiseowl.ph, and we'd love to hear from you. Send your feedback to hoot@wiseowl.ph.
Use your voice. Give a hoot.